The Evaporating Cloud, or simply the cloud, is a necessity-based logic tool from theory of constraints thinking processes. The Evaporating Cloud is also referred to as conflict resolution diagram, and as the name suggests, the conflict resolution diagram, or cloud, is used to surface and resolve conflicts or dilemmas. I am Christian Homan, your host, and I will walk you through this introduction to the Evaporating Cloud. The Evaporating Cloud is based on two basic assumptions. First, conflicts. This means opposition about objectives or opposing point of views, for instance, tend to be settled by compromise. Yet compromising requires making concessions that lead to a solution which isn't satisfactory for neither side, hence a win-lose or lose-lose situation. There must be a way to solve the conflict in a true win-win manner. Second, conflicts are often the result of false assumptions, beliefs or myths, which constrain needlessly the organization. As two opposite things cannot be true at the same time, one is necessarily false. If the falseness can be proven, the conflict disappears or evaporates, and a no-compromise win-win solution is found. But if there are no false assumptions or beliefs, but a constraining rule or policy instead, resolving the conflict is done by injecting a solution, a countermeasure, or a remedy that didn't exist in the system. Basically, an evaporating cloud consists of 5 entities. These are the round-cornered box, conventionally named A, B, C, D, and D prime, and set in such an arrangement. Entity A is the common objective which requires B and C to exist. Remember, the evaporating cloud is built on necessity-based logic. And we read, in order to have A, we must have B and C. D is the prerequisite to B. In order to have B, we must have D, while D prime is the prerequisite to C. Alternatively, B and C are called needs, and D prime are called wants. D and D prime cannot exist or happen simultaneously, like for example attending a meeting in Rome and at the same time attending a conference in Berlin. In this case, the conflict would be a dilemma choosing between the two events. D and D prime may not happen simultaneously because available resources do not allow it, and the dilemma is about allocating the scarce resource. In a true conflict, D endangers C and D prime endangers B. The arrows are symbols of the necessity relationship. At the same time, the arrows are hiding the underlying assumptions, and these can be true or false. These assumptions are usually statements or beliefs and/or justification for the relationship. The evaporating cloud's purpose is to surface and test these assumptions. The broken arrow or lightning between D and D prime is the symbol for opposition or conflict. Once the evaporating cloud is drawn, participants are asked to verbalize all underlying assumptions under each arrow. If one of the assumptions can be proven as false, it is probable that the problem simply evaporates. An assumption can also be invalidated by an injection, which are ideas or conditions that render one of the assumptions invalid. The injection is then the cure to the conflict. Here is a classic example of a conflict in manufacturing. Sales need to stick to varying customer orders and demand more agility in production. This means run small batches and change often. Production needs to achieve productivity objectives and therefore wants to run long production series without frequent changeovers. We see that the two branches are necessary for achieving the common goal, which is to ensure a sustainable business. Of course, production cannot do both, which means manufacture in small batches and change frequently, and at the same time run long series and not change frequently. Each side is right from its own perspective, so let's read the cloud as it is before digging into the underlying assumptions. In order to ensure sustainable business, we must adhere or stick to varying customer orders. In order to stick to varying customer orders, we must run small batches and change often. On the other side, in order to ensure sustainable business, we must run production efficiently. In order to run production efficiently, we must run long production series. Change often endangers running production efficiently, and running long production series endangers adherence to the varying demand. Now that the scene is set, it is time to explore the underlying assumptions. For each arrow, we must ask the subject matter experts to justify why there is a necessity relationship between entities. Their assumptions are listed, and in this example, in order to save time, I rephrase the statement using the so-called extreme wording, which is deliberately exaggerating the importance of the statement. The cloud reads, in order to ensure sustainable business, we must adhere or stick to varying customer orders because delivering quickly whatever customer wants is mandatory for staying in business. The emphasis is put on whatever and mandatory in order to probe if the whole production portfolio must follow the same rule or if there are exceptions. The idea here is to check if different product segments can be managed differently. Some products could be manufactured in large series, while others must be manufactured in small batches. Next, in order to stick to varying customer orders, we must run small batches and change often because running small batches is the only way to quickly deliver what customers want in a highly variable market. This statement is obviously false, as we can serve customers off the shelf from inventories and quickly deliver without the need to manufacture in small batches, for example. Let's see one more assumption from production. In order to run production efficiently, we must run long production series because we can absolutely not produce during the entire changeover, and changeover and settings always take a long time. Even if the first assumption sounds true and sound, the way of rephrasing it with absolutely not and entire is for the sake of probing if production is possible in certain phases of the changeover, even if it is not yet completed. Those of you familiar with SMED or single minute exchange of die approach understand what I'm trying to do. Check if the involved parties know about SMED, are using it, and if not, present it as an injection to invalidate both statements. If with the help of SMED we can drastically reduce the changeover duration, manufacturing in small batches and changing often will not harm productivity so painfully anymore on the one hand, and if we can segregate the product portfolio and partly serve our customer off the shelf, we don't need to perfectly stick to varying demand and refrain from changing production every time on the other hand. This is only a limited and fast sample of how to proceed with the evaporating cloud. In reality, I would go into the details of every assumption behind every arrow, proceed step by step to let people time to follow the logic used to build up the cloud, and then neutralize the conflict with their consent, of course. An evaporating cloud can be used as a standalone problem-solving tool or sequentially in a problem-solving process using the logical thinking process toolset. In the later case, the evaporating cloud is usually used after building a current reality tree. The gap analysis with the current reality tree helps discover the critical root causes of all undesirable effects, usually called problems. Often one or several critical root causes are conflicting with a necessary condition elsewhere in the system. This is where the evaporating cloud can evaporate, thus solve the problems. This was a quick and simplified introduction to the evaporating cloud or conflict resolution diagram. As so often, don't be misled by the apparent simplicity of the tool. It takes some practice and experience to work with clouds. If you have found interest and value in this video, please give it a thumb up and share it. See you soon on my blogs, social media, or here on this YouTube channel.